Welcome to Sips with the Suriel. I'm Jenna.
I'm Danielle.
And I'm Dina.
We're just three best friends who like to get together and talk books. We would love for you to follow along with us each week, just like a book club. We will tell you the week before what book we will be discussing so you can make sure you've read it. If you check out our Instagram, each of us, mostly Dina, likes to make art, so we will post our art interpretations for each book. Today we have author Emma Gray here with us. She is a USA Today bestselling author of The Last Love Note and Pictures of You. Welcome, Emma. We're so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you so much. And what a dream for three best friends to be doing something like this together. It's amazing.
It's pretty fun.
Thank you. I mean, we get to read really fun books and then talk about it. It's not a hard gig.
Oh, I think so many people would just, dream of doing something like that, and you've gone and actually made it happen. I think that's terrific.
Oh, thank you so much. That's so nice of you to say.
Yeah.
So here with Sips at the Suriel, we like to pair a drink with our books that we talk about. I'm currently on cold medicine, so I am not drinking tonight. But we have created the drink called Faded Memories, to go with the book Pictures of You. So it's kind of like
what does it involve?
I was just going to say,
what's in the drink?
It's basically a Bay Breeze.
The other name was going to be Jervis Bay Breeze, but faded memories.
Right. Yes, lovely.
Like
sounds delicious. I mean, it's 10:30 a.m. in Australia while we're recording this, so I'm on coffee at the moment. But
there you go.
Yeah, good call.
It's a mocktail for you.
That sounds great.
Good call. Good call. Well, we weren't going to do beer because we know Evie does not like beer. Sometimes she'll sip some champagne, though. Okay.
All right. So we'll start out light and fluffy. So tell us a bit about yourself, and do you have any fun hobbies outside of writing?
You live in Australia, so do you do any of the crazy terrain, and do you hang out with kangaroos every day?
Well, actually, I mean, sounds so funny, but sometimes I have seen kangaroos hopping onto my front lawn, going past my house.
Wow.
We have deer, you have kangaroos.
Because I live near Canberra, which is the capital city in Australia, and we're surrounded by a lot of national parks, and it's just not uncommon to have kangaroos. And I don't want to say that's typical of all of Australia, but you would be very rare to see that happening in Sydney, for example. But
okay. Not Sydney.
I do see kangaroos. I wouldn't describe that as one of my hobbies, but
kangaroo game.
I love photography, which comes out a lot in pictures of views. It's a hobby that I picked up during the pandemic, and we'd be allowed out for a walk for an hour a day, and I did an iPhone photography course at first, and then I graduated onto a proper camera, like a big camera, and have done a whole bunch of courses and workshops, and I absolutely love it. I get completely lost in behind the lens in a way that even writing doesn't sort of create. Too busy thinking when I'm writing.
Are you doing digital or film, both?
Digital, yes. I haven't sort of learnt the film. I mean, I remember using film photography when I was young. So I'm now in my early 50s, so I remember that, but I've never done the dark room experience.
Oh, it's so fun if you do ever get a chance. I did it in college, and it was so wonderful. I loved it. I was like, I'm going to a dark room in my house.
Yeah,
it's really fun.
So as a photographer then, just going into real quick the book Pictures of You, where a certain character, they were talking about how it took them 30 minutes to set up a shot. Is that real? Will it sometimes for lighting and things like that?
Yes, if you're taking, particularly with astrophotography, if you're taking shots of the night sky, you can leave the camera running, the shot running for a long time, and get these beautiful long exposure photos that will show star trails and all kinds of things.
Oh, that's gorgeous.
I always wondered how they do that, because you see those shots and they're so beautiful, but I can't do that on my iPhone.
No. I think 10 seconds is the limit on the iPhone. I'm not sure, but there's been a lot of recent aurora activity in the sky, and people are getting some great shots on their phones of the aurora.
That's a film,
which is
sounds so
pretty
magical.
cool. Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a fun hobby. I like that.
That is. That's a very good hobby.
It's so nice to see it come out in your writing like that. Your passion. Very cool.
Yes.
All right. So what made you want to start writing? I particularly liked your Jane Austen stuff and pictures of you. Jenna and actually, we just saw Pride and Prejudice in theaters. They re-released it
for the 20th anniversary.
Yeah. So it was like all fresh in my mind again. But it was like she an inspiration or what inspired
Definitely, you? Absolutely. And really it was actually L.M. Montgomery that got me first. When I was 14 and it was 1987 and I sat down with my aunts and my grandmother and my mum and sister, and they introduced us to Anne of Green Gables on the 1980s miniseries. And I remember sitting there with my sister and we both instantly fell in love with Gilbert, of course. But I just sat there and thought of Anne as a writer and how she had this burning desire to write. And, you know, she had all those debacles of publishing, you know, the Rollings Reliable baking powder writing competition and all that sort of stuff. And I thought, gosh, I love the way she feels about writing. I feel like that. And she always had these stories in her head at all times, and she was so imaginative. And I thought, but I carry around stories like that. And so I went the next day to a little news agency near my grandmother's house, and this was in the summer holidays. And I bought a notebook and pen because, of course, we didn't have laptops or anything, and started writing this novel that I think was supposed to be Australia's answer to Anne of Green Gables at the time. It was just terrible. But my sister looked at me and said, why are you doing homework in the school holidays? And she just couldn't understand what I was doing. And I thought, this doesn't feel like homework or work at all. It just feels like so much fun. And I realized that's really what it is to be a writer. It's any person that has stories in their head and tries to get them on a page somehow. And so I've been writing ever since I was 14.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Oh, wonderful. Oh, good. Okay, so what's your ultimate writing setup then? Do you have any writing rituals, like a go-to drink, snack, place in your house or somewhere outside of your house to go to write?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I've tried the whole cafe restaurant kind of experience, and I just sit there and people watch and pretend to write. I just don't really get anything done. So I do most of my writing at home, mostly in my pajamas. I usually will start in bed at 6. Whenever I wake up, 6 o'clock in the morning, I'll reach for my laptop and can be quite focused at that time of day. Then I have to get up and get my son to school and all of that. And then I've got a beautiful little veranda out the front of my house, like a porch. But little tiny porch, and I love to sit on there in the morning with the sun and sort of start the day out there. And then I kind of follow the sun through the house during the day, and I'll end up out the back of the house where the sun's coming in the other way. And in summer, I might even end up in the backyard at night, you know, under the stars.
Oh, that sounds
not
magical.
I'm also. It does sound magical.
That's so romantic.
I don't want to make it sound like I'm achieving that every single day. It's not like that at all. I'm really a binge writer. I'll spend time not writing at all for weeks, and then suddenly, particularly if there's a deadline coming up, I can just focus on nothing but getting this story down. And everywhere I drive, I'm only in the book in my head and just, you know, thinking about it all the time. So binge writing. When somebody told me about that as a concept, I was so relieved, because you read all these things saying, what is your writer routine and do you stick to it? And I thought, no, I don't. And, you know, is that a problem? And then when they said at the end of the year, you've still got a new book. So whatever works, you know.
Who cares?
And your books are so successful. So obviously you don't change what you're doing. It's working for you.
Doing something right.
Yeah.
No, beautiful. Okay. And do you write an outline, or do you discover the story as you go? Or are you one of these people who have it like all planned out in their head and then you just write it all down?
So wish I was one of those people, but I'm not. And I've tried it several times and I can't. I just can't. I can stare at a blank page, or I've got a whiteboard on my kitchen wall now, and I can stare at that and think, come on, where is this story? How can I structure it out? Nothing comes to me. And then I sit down and I remember that it just all comes out through writing. So I've never plotted a book, and that became quite complicated with Pictures of You, because it's a very complicated plot, and I got quite tangled up. at one stage I really didn't know what was happening. I don't think it's a spoiler to say that one of the main character has amnesia for most of the book, so she didn't know what was happening either.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah,
you're in that with her.
And so, but I love that process. It just feels so exciting to be discovering the book as you write it. And it's the same feeling as I get reading someone else's book or watching a film or TV series.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking, what happens next? And, you know, it's all a surprise to me.
that's cool.
In the last love note, there was a secret between two of the main characters. And I mentioned that there was a secret early on in the book, and I thought, I wonder what that is. I had no idea the whole way through. In fact, I thought it was something else most of the way through.
Oh my gosh.
And then it came out, and I thought, oh God, I didn't think it was that. And
you're like reading and writing at the same time. I love it.
It feels like that, yeah.
I'm like jealous. That sounds amazing. You sound like the best, like that has the best job ever.
That's such a cool process.
I think that's what makes it so bingeable too, because like you're there, like I was like devouring your books. Yeah. I think I read, what was it, The Last Love Note in like a day or something, because I was just so hooked. And like, it's so funny that that's how you write it. It's how we're reading it, basically.
Yeah. That's right. And then, of course, it then goes through an editing process, so things can change, and you then have to put the different hat on and think, okay, now does this make sense? Because of, you know, you kind of gone off track. And so then it's a bit more of it feels a bit more like proper work, I guess is the way to describe it when you're editing. But certainly that writing process, there's nothing like it when you get carried along by these characters as if you're just a passenger, and I am watching it as if it's unfolding on a screen and just trying to get the action and the dialogue down on the page.
That's cool. I like that. Very fun.
So my first draft was usually really short, like not really short, but it's usually, I think, I don't know, about 70,000 words, which is a bit short for a novel. But that's because I just race to the end of that messy first draft, get the story down, and then I've got something to work with. So you won't find a lot of narrative description in the first draft, for example, because I might end up popping 30 or 40,000 words, as I've done with both of those books, and just deleting them and rewriting bits and all sorts of things. Yeah.
Okay.
Have you ever, not to like cut in on everybody's questions, but it's just popping in. Have you ever gotten to a point in a book and have decided, you know what, I want the whole trajectory to change?
Yeah, I have. Interestingly, with The Last Love Note, I submitted it to Penguin Books in Australia, who offered me a publishing contract. And after they'd accepted it, my editor, Ali Watts, sat me down and she said, I love this book. I would publish it sort of as is, but, you know, it's my job as an editor to help you as a writer to improve and all of that. So I will come to you with some suggestions. And how do you feel about rewriting the first half?
Oh, wow.
Oh, wow. You know, that's, you kind of think that once you get the publishing deal, you're sort of almost there. And yet that's where really a lot of the work begins. And and the book is so much better because of her advice. And so I'm really keen to listen to editors and what their feedback is. I'd rather hear it from them than read it on Goodreads. You know, it's a much better way of approaching it.
No, that's true.
So did it change drastically then?
Well, yes. I mean, I think she wanted me to bring, you know, in The Last Love Note, I'm trying to think how to say it without spoilers, but when the story really turns to a much deeper and sadder trajectory, she wanted that coming further up in the book than it was originally, and just things like that. But I had COVID then the weekend before that book was finally due in, the restructure of that book. And I remember I must have been delirious and feverish, and I suddenly got the idea to very much cut and paste huge parts of that book into different places and restructure it. And I posted that on Facebook, and my agent saw that, and I don't think she's recovered. It was 2021. She still hasn't recovered. We were handing this in 2 days' time.
Oh, no.
Next morning, it's fine. I'm going to get up tomorrow morning and read through the whole thing and just make sure it still makes sense this way. And then I woke up the next day. I was so sick I couldn't do anything. So I just sent it in as is. And it was pretty much what we've ended up with. And so
hilarious.
I really think there's a bit of subconscious, your subconscious mind knows more about what's happening a lot of the time than your conscious mind. And, what's conscious, but barely.
It's almost like your gut instinct is right.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Fascinating.
Very. So did anything inspire you? Any other books or even shows or anything while you were writing Pictures of You?
Well, what really inspired me for that one is the work that my daughter is doing. She's doing a doctorate in criminology at an Australian university. And she and I were standing in a bookshop after somebody else's book launch. And we were just talking. I'd started writing the book. I said, I don't know what's happening because I don't know at that point. But this main character has woken up with amnesia. She doesn't know. She's lost the entire last 13 years of her life, and she's learnt, and this is in the first chapter, so I think we can say it. Yeah. She's learnt that her husband has been killed in a car accident, and she can't remember him and anything about him. And my daughter, from her studies into gendered violence and a whole lot of really fascinating and important areas, came up with really what then drove the rest of the plot. And so she came on my recent US book tour, and we actually did some events together, which was incredible. Because it was like, the mother talking about the fictional product of a daughter's research, which was just such a lovely experience as a mum for me to go through.
That's so beautiful.
To work with your daughter. I love that.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
That's amazing. I love that so much. I got chills.
Oh, I hope you guys work on more things in the future.
Yeah, well, I think what was interesting was that a couple of times we were approached by people on the book tour, like a young woman who was doing fundraising for her sorority, and she said, we really need to get this book into university campuses, and young women need to read this. Can we do something together? And so we're thinking about ways that we can both potentially go into schools and universities and do combined events talking about
now I have more chills. That's amazing. I love that.
I think she needs to get her PhD finished first. She's got a few months till her thesis is due in, so I'm trying not to overload her with little extra things.
What is her thesis on? Now I'm interested.
It's actually looking into dating apps and violence perpetrated against women through dating apps and safety online and that kind of thing. So it's very topical, important research that she's doing.
Very important research. Yes.
Sounds awesome.
Yeah, she sounds really cool.
She is. I love it. We should do a podcast with her.
Yes. Fun.
Well,
you know what? Jenna and I used to have a true crime podcast
for 3 years. Yeah, we did it
during COVID. We started it, so if we ever hop back over there, we'll invite her on.
Definitely, yeah.
I don't think we ever did an Australia story.
No, we never did.
Love it. We would love it. Yeah.
Keep that in mind.
I love that. Okay, Dina.
So we're going to kind of dive into book-specific questions. We're going to focus on Pictures of You since it's your most recent release. But, I mean, if y'all haven't read The Last Love Note, go out and read it. It's amazing and definitely bingeable. So in Pictures of You, it touches on grief, love, rediscovery. Was there a specific moment or feeling that first sparked the idea of the story for you?
I think it's actually a story that's been brewing over several decades for me, because I remember back in the 80s standing around the school lockers talking about first boyfriends with my friends, and we didn't have the language that we have now for things like love bombing and gaslighting and coercive control. But we would say, he's so obsessed with me. He just wants to spend all his time with me. And that kind of thing was happening. And people were getting into really difficult relationships at that age. And so I did want to do a flashback kind of a story that had a high school beginning. And then I remembered over the years that I would be talking to colleagues at work in my 20s and 30s. And this was before we had mobile phones, and we would pick up the phone on our colleague's desk, and it would be their partner ringing for the third or fourth time in an hour going, where is she? Who is she with? That kind of question.
Wow.
And now I'm 51, and I've got a lot of friends who've come through divorces or come through the loss of a partner, and they're back on the dating circuit in dating apps, for example, and this is happening again.
Wow.
And then I have even spoken to a lot of people this surprising number of people who have said to me, I've read pictures of you and it's like reading my parents' marriage of 50 years. This is the dynamic they've had. So this is a topic that crosses all age brackets, all socioeconomic classes and all of that. I don't know why I say classes. We don't say that in Australia very much. But anyway, you know what I mean?
You're just coming back from America, so.
I don't know. Yeah, it must be that. But so yeah, it's, and I felt like it was so there was all of that background, and then there was Hannah and her research, and it sort of just all came together. And then in a general concept, and then it just flowed out as I described before, just in a, I don't know, whatever came on the page is what happened. They let it, the characters let it.
I mean, it touches on such sensitive topic or things that, I mean, I'll be honest, I was in a relationship similar to that when I was in college, and to see it on paper and to kind of confirm that I wasn't crazy.
Yeah.
It was very, I don't know, like cathartic for me. So I mean, this book, like, it really touched me deeply. So I think I reached out to you the day that I finished. I was like, thank you so much for writing this, because it really was almost a healing point for me.
Oh gosh, now it's me with goosebumps. And that just means so much to me. It meant so much to me when you contacted me. But I've heard that a few times now, and I actually met some young women at in Charleston at my book event there, and they said they'd had a similar college relationship, each of them, and that reading the book had changed their brain chemistry about that relationship. And it was, and that's why I write. And I think we need to see ourselves on screen. I know that my personal background was, which, comes out in the last love note, is that I lost my husband. He passed away in 2016. And for me, the cathartic experience has been writing about grief and loss, which comes up in Pictures of You as well. In fact, I lost my mum while I was writing Pictures of You. And so you can see that coming out a lot in the story as well. And I think we do use books either as writers or readers, or as people watching TV and movies to help process the real life experiences that we're having. I think it's easier sometimes than, I remember when Jeff died, people sent me a whole lot of books to read, just such kindness. Friends would send books and lasagnas and all the other stuff, of course. And a lot of nonfiction books about grief and how to get through it and what to do and what's going on in your head, explaining it. And that's important too. But it was fiction, either in books or on the screen, that really would make me sit there and bawl my eyes out and develop that healing. I think you are safe with fiction because it isn't you that you're reading about, but it so is you as well. It's very much your story, just with a different life.
Yeah. And a resolution, perhaps, depending on the story.
Yeah.
That's the point.
Yeah.
Oh,
wow. Well, thank you for sharing all of that. And we're so sorry for your losses too.
absolutely.
Thank you. Yeah. I don't know how I would have got through them without writing.
Amazing.
Because even before writing the books, just writing, I used to write a lot on Facebook on my private page, sorry to all my friends who might be listening, all the stuff I wrote. But then I actually had then this in the moment record of exactly what it felt like right from the first day that Jeff died, for example, or that Mum died, and all that sorts of other things, so that when I did come, and it wasn't in my head, put this down so that you can later use it in a book. It wasn't that. It was me trying to talk about it and people piling on with their own experiences. And then I was able to later go back to those posts and remember exactly how it felt early on and capture that in the novels.
That must be a really healing experience to go back from a different version of yourself, honestly, after going through a loss like that, and see that perspective and how you've healed yourself through.
It came to that really sort of hit home on the tour in a certain book event that I had, where there was a woman in the audience who had just lost her husband in October. So, and this was January, this book tour. So she was only a couple of months in, and she started speaking at the end in the Q&A bit and was talking about this, and there were probably about 40 or 50 people in the room, and she got emotional, and I just got off the stage and sat next to her, and we just had this
Oh,
incredible
beautiful.
little talk about grief and loss. And she was saying that I gave her hope because here I was, in one piece sort of thing, years on, several years ahead of where she was. And I remembered looking at people like that when I was at the beginning and thinking, I just have to look, they're okay, so maybe I'll be okay, maybe. And everyone in that room just held us there in this incredibly precious conversation. And I'll just never forget it. It was one of those things that felt like it was worth going from Australia to the US, going to 8 states in 10 days, which was, exhausting, but wonderful. It was worth all of that just for that one conversation. It was, those are the interactions that really matter. And there's a lot of time when you're a writer that you're sitting there tearing your hair out over edits and worrying if you're ever going to get this done, and having a whole lot of other emotions about fear of failure and rejection, all that stuff. So it can be really difficult, but those little moments like that just make it all worthwhile.
Wow.
You sound like you have a heart of gold. Oh my goodness.
I know.
You write for like your enjoyment, but also to help other people. It's beautiful.
Yeah. I mean, it's all very mutual. I get so much support from everyone else. It's just it's like an ecosystem where we all help each other at different times, I think.
Yeah.
You're just a lovely human, I
Oh my
think.
gosh, right. What a breath of fresh air. Oh, I love it.
Oh, that's so nice of you to say.
So speaking of more emotional scenes and stuff, the Jervis Bay scene, beautiful, beautiful scene. It's almost like a turning point for the characters in the book. Can you walk us through what inspired the setting for this moment and how it symbolizes the characters?
Oh, so it's such a beautiful part of Australia and the world. It's a beach that has just extremely white sand and crystal, like aqua waters, and it's just a stunning part of the world. It's only a couple of hours from here, and I mean, we have got some beautiful beaches in Australia, and I can't stop writing about them. I'm waiting for my editors to say, can we possibly avoid beaches in the next book? It's
No.
anyway. I think water is incredibly healing for a lot of people.
Agreed.
And certainly for me. And in my own life, after Jeff died, I remember every time I went to the beach, I would almost mark it in my head as how far have I come since the last time I was at the beach, because I don't live at the beach. So it sort of felt like this natural milestone every time. And I'd think, oh, that's right, I feel a lot lighter this time, or, whatever it was. And so I think I already had that in my head, that it can be a really healing experience. And then for these characters, it became a thing that they could go back and measure as well later on, and compare, I think, two different experiences, one positive and one negative too, which was important. In this book, there are two very different relationships. There's a very toxic one and a very healthy one. And I wanted to make sure that was the case, so that we were able to have that hope that she could move towards, as a lot of people do and can move towards a better situation next. And I just wanted them to share what was a very magical experience with the bioluminescence and all of that. I haven't seen bioluminescence myself, but I have captured the aurora multiple times with my camera. So I knew how it felt to just be bowled over by something magical like that. And I think when you share something that deeply, it does stick with you. It changes you in some way, and it becomes something that you can come back to in later life and feel how far you've come, and enjoy, and enjoy just these different deep experiences. I think we all get so stuck, me too, in our phones and on TV at night, watching every show and binge watching things, reading a lot, which is great, of course. But but I often think when I do go out to do some photography at night, for example, I think, gosh, why am I not out here every night? This is incredible. It feels so different. I wanted to capture some of that in the book.
That was
It was
beautiful. Yeah.
it was beautiful. I had to Google. I mean, I'm not very familiar. I didn't even know the place actually existed, so I had to Google and see for myself. It's gorgeous.
It is gorgeous. It's just
Yeah.
beautiful.
Bucket
Yeah.
list.
Yeah, for sure.
I wasn't so scared of the long flight to Australia.
Oh my goodness. I can tell you that I was very lucky this time because Qantas sponsored my flight. So I was able to, for the first time in my life, fly business class. And I arrived almost as if I was a human being this time, which was amazing. Whereas other times it's such
Luxury,
a
luxury.
long flight. Yeah. Yeah.
Oh my
Wow.
goodness.
So which character surprised you the most as you were writing? Someone who took on a bigger role or developed in an unexpected way for you?
I think it was probably Drew who I fell in love with.
I mean,
He
Yeah.
I mean, he's just such a delight. And the thing about him, I think, was that he was vulnerable. And I wanted to make sure that of the two male characters in this book, that they both had a difficult past. And I wanted to make the point subtly that that doesn't need to define how you then go on to treat other people. Because he could just as easily have done the same.
100%.
So
Yeah.
so that to me was important, and I just loved him as. In fact, I had a message the other day from a young carers organisation here who asked if I would get involved in some work with them because they'd never seen a young carer character in a novel, and I thought I didn't go into it meaning to write necessarily about him being a carer, but that's what he was with his mum, and so that kind of thing also I think deepened who he was and what he had to triumph over. But he was just so endlessly supportive of her, even though he was hurt. And I just have a real soft spot for him.
right? I'm like choking up. I'm gonna blame it's that I'm sick, and I'm always emotional when I'm sick. Because at first you meet him and you're like, what a grump, and then
Yes, exactly. Yeah.
and then you're like, oh no, he's amazing. He's just going through a lot.
I pulled up to work. I was finishing the book, and I'm listening to the audio in the car, and I was like, "Get it together, get it together." I was like, "Okay."
And you know what's lovely is that Nick English, who narrates the audio, is an absolute delight as well. And I've been talking to him on Instagram, and he said, "Oh, I've got such a soft spot for Drew," and just the way he talks about Drew was gorgeous.
Oh, well, now we need to follow him on Instagram. Nick English,
sure.
yes.
Yes. Nick with an NIC.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Love that. New follower.
Yeah. So grief and joy are intertwined in this book. How do you balance writing about heavy emotions without overwhelming the reader?
Yeah, I think it's so important because at the same time, I don't want to shy away from the depth of those emotions. I think that's what's really making the difference in terms of people crying and feeling as if this reflects their own life. It's scary as a writer to go that far into grief, for example, or, you know, a coercive relationship in this example. And I think if you pull back, people have said to me, do you ever look at what you've written and think, oh, it's a bit too much, I might pull that back? And I said, no, I go further in actually at that point because I just think it's important to say it exactly like it is. And then at the same time, I don't want people to be stuck in that part of the story. So, and I also at the same time think that life isn't always 100% one way or the other. There is a real mix and balance in life of joy and grief and all the other emotions. So I did read a review that someone said that I pull people deep into the emotion, but I don't let them drown there. And I pull them. And I think, and I think that's important, and it's something that I want to keep doing in my books, keep balancing that light and shade, because that's just how life feels to me. It's not all the book tour and the excitement of the book tour. It's also the tearing your hair out with the edits in your pajamas, it's just how it is. And even when you go to a funeral, for example, there's often a lot of tears, but then there's a lot of laughter as well, because we're remembering the happier things or the funnier things. And there's a whole opening scene in the last love note where her son walks out with a grenade, an actual grenade, and that really happened in my family. My son walked out. That whole scene is almost exactly, minus the hot neighbor and the boss turning up, is almost exactly what happened.
Wow.
And I remember as it was happening, because my husband was a military historian, so
I was gonna ask how a grenade was in your house.
So he had this genuine Vietnam era grenade in his study, and I was packing up the house to move, and my little boy, who was 5, wandered out and said, "Why did Daddy have a grenade in his study?" And I remember thinking at the time, I was on the phone actually. I said, "I have to go," and put the phone down, and then I gingerly took this grenade from him and I put it on the coffee table and I took a photo of it and I posted it on Facebook. And because the storyteller in me was like immediately gripped by this scenario, which ended in the bomb squad coming to our house and then the army coming to our house. It was just gold. And I was sitting there live posting as it was happening, thinking, this has got to go into a book one day. It was that sort of unusual situation that sometimes happens. So yeah, but see, that was a book about grief, and she was in the midst of her grief when this happened, and yet it's hilarious, or it can be hilarious. Thankfully, it had a happy ending, didn't explode, it was fine. But it's that sort of mix of funny, happy, sad that we have all the time.
Mm-hmm. And I was gonna say too, the main female character in that book, she's very funny. Like I would laugh out loud at she's just so quirky and having that humor mixed in with the heaviness of what was going on was just it was a nice balance, and you didn't feel like the entire time you're just sad. There's a story behind it, and I thought that was done beautifully.
Yeah, and I never sat down. I sat down and knew that I would write a book about grief and about being a midlife widow, but at no point did it enter my head that was going to be all sad, that book. I knew that it would just be a reflection of life, and I've always loved romance and rom-coms and all of that, and I can't help but turn the book into something like that as well. So I think you just sort of have to be true to yourself and how you feel about the situation, and that's why we can have so many books on one topic and they're all different. We have to just find our own voice and never be put off by the fact that somebody else has written a book about a midlife widow or whatever it is that you're wanting to write.
And you kind of talk about that too in that book, where just because it's been done before, it hasn't been done in your words or your situation.
That's right.
Everybody experiences grief differently, so
totally. And I learned that when Mum died, because I thought going into Mum had advanced dementia actually, which is where that storyline came from in the last love note. I was able to change my own experience but still write about something that I knew about through Mum. And I remember getting towards her death and thinking, I'm going to be okay because I know all about grief because I lost my husband. And I'm sort of an expert on grief, really, because I've just been living it for the last few years. And then she died. And I realized I'm only an expert on losing Jeff. I'm not an expert on losing Mum yet. And then I had to learn how it felt because it was an entirely different situation, an entirely different relationship. So even one person can experience grief in many different ways, depending on who they've got.
Yeah.
Wow. I'm in my head thinking right now, like how deep and that's so true and moving. And that's why you're the writer. Oh my goodness. Oh my gosh, this interview is like your books where I'm happy and laughing and then I'm thinking and crying. Oh my goodness.
Funny. So kind of going back to how we talked about before, the book highlights how subtle and insidious emotional abuse can be. So what was important to you in writing those dynamics, and what message are you hoping to weave into the story? I know we kind of touched on it, but we can go a little bit deeper in.
Yeah, well, that's coming up again now because this book has been optioned for a TV series, and I'm already talking to the producers. I can't believe these words are coming out of my mouth, actually. It's only all very new.
So
anyway, but it's coming up again because now we're saying, how would we want to portray this story on the screen? And I've been really clear with the publishers and the producers right from the start that this is a responsibility that we have to get this right and to be accurate and not to romanticize this relationship. And that's the trap. And we've seen that happen even in marketing terms with other things. Anyway,
I know.
You know what I'm saying. I just don't want to get into that. But, so I felt really responsible for getting this right. And I involved a friend who is the executive director of the National Women's Safety Alliance in Australia. And she read the book. I think she's read it more times than I have. And she gave me such wonderful feedback, and we wanted to make sure that there were things like resources and, you know, places people could go and be directed to if this raised issues for them. So I think it's really important to be respectful. And the challenge with something like this is that lots of these relationships start off with fireworks, with an absolute, you know, the love bombing that we can see in retrospect can often feeling like an incredibly, you know, wonderful free fall into romantic love. And so you do have to capture that part of it. But I wanted to ensure that at no point was that seen through this rom-com kind of angle. And a lot of the things that happen along the way are just extremely subtle. And so it was really important to do it like that as well, not to be bashing the reader over the head with this is what he's doing, you know. It had to be very insidious and subtle, the way that it happens in real life, so that she almost didn't notice a lot of it as it was happening. And it was in retrospect that she could see things. We could see it happening, but you could sort of understand why she couldn't. And that's what, you know, very similar to how it feels when you have a friend or a family member who's in that kind of relationship and you can see it, but they can't. And you know, it's that time when people will say, well, she's such an intelligent woman, why doesn't she just leave? And they can't understand this, and not realizing that she's at most at risk at that moment she chooses to leave, and all that sort of thing. And I knew from the research that in 98% in Australia, in 98% of intimate partner homicides, the murder is the first physical violence. If this has been a coercive, controlling relationship, the murder is often the first act of physical violence.
Oh my gosh!
But in 98% of these relationships, in these deaths, coercive control was present first, and it's just so common, and yet people, because of the nature of it, are too scared to talk about it. So. I've had people read this book who have not realized that they are in a relationship that they're in, and have messaged me and said, this book has suddenly helped me to see, you know, what's happening in my own life, and I hadn't been able to either see it or sort of admit it to themselves. And so, you know, that's, I don't even remember what your question is now, but
you're good.
That's where we're coming from when we're trying to sort of put this story now onto the screen. And interestingly, one of the things they were talking about was potential for a returnable series rather than just cover the book in a limited series. So perhaps we can see what happens next, and that would be a great opportunity to explore that healthy relationship and how hard that is coming out of the relationship, that kind of thing, which, you know, we didn't have a chance to go through in the book.
Oh,
wow.
That's a good idea. Yeah,
that would be amazing. Wow. And what an amazing statistic that I didn't know about, where the first act of violence is the murder sometimes in that kind of dynamic.
That's
scary.
Very.
It is
scary.
Yeah, it really is terrifying. And we just, I mean, every day we see this playing out it's horrific how many times we see this happen. And I don't know what the answers are, but I think the more we talk about it, it has to be a good start.
Yes, absolutely.
Wow. Amazing.
So we're going to take the roller coaster up.
Yes.
Normally, we ask the question, if Pictures of You was turned into a film or limited series, who would be your dream cast? But hello, that's already happening for you. Congratulations. Can we hear more about that?
Yeah, I can't talk about, I'm not allowed to talk about actual casting ideas now. Before, I just used to always sort of throw them out there, but now I actually can't. Just to say that the Australian producers are very keen to work with a US production company as well. And they are also they know that I have an amazing audience of readers in the US. And so they are looking at Australian actors who are known in the US. So that sort of a bit more, so you can just go and research that and see what you can.
America
loves my head.
And I'm excited.
America loves Australian actors.
Yeah, we do.
So send me through any of your ideas for Australian actors that you might find.
Okay. Yes.
We're on it.
Yeah.
Get ready to have your DMs blown up.
That's right. So it's such a I mean, I can barely articulate, as you can tell, the experience I had a couple of weeks ago sitting in the producer's office talking about these characters as if they're real people and about their ideas. And she said, I've stripped the book into 2 parts. I've got, the past storyline, the present storyline. It happens over 6 days. And I said, does it? And, she knew more about it than me. And it's fascinating to me to watch the process they're going to go through in just coming up with a creative concept for how they will take a book, which, when you listen to it takes, 13 hours or something. I don't know how long it is on Audible, but on audio, but, you listen to it and you read it and it has to be told in a different way on the screen, but they're so respectful of the story and wanting to make sure they capture it accurately. And it's thrilling. It's so exciting. I mean, it's just a dream to be even talking about it as a concept.
That's so incredible. That's amazing. And I imagine that has to be so exciting to sit there and then literally bring your book that was in your brain to life with real human beings.
I know. The other cute thing is I told you that I started writing at 14 at my grandmother's house. Well, it turns out that the producers live, their office is about a 20-minute drive from my grandmother's house. No, I don't live anywhere near it. I had to fly there to have the meeting. But it's like the whole full circle of ending up walking into the place I used to hang around, as a teenager on school holidays to talk about these books I dreamt about this as a teenager. It's just so...
You're coming full circle.
I know. Yeah. That's so nice.
I had done something a little bit similar before because I wrote a couple of young adult novels 10 years ago or more, when one of my daughters, not Hannah, who I've been talking about, but her sister Sophie hated reading but loved Harry Styles and One Direction. Anyway, I remember thinking, maybe I should write a novel for Sophie to show her that reading could be fun. So I wrote a book about a girl and a boy band. Anyway, that book was then published in Australia, and then my own friend from high school, who was a composer, said to me, look, I've never been interested in boys or in boy bands. And she's a classical musician. Anyway, she said, I just can't stop thinking about the fact that I want to write a musical based on your novel. So do you want to do that together? So we did, and we put it on at my daughter's school, and it was just
fun.
It was so fun. It was so much fun. And it was that feeling that you just described, though, of sitting in the audience, watching the characters that came out of my head, walking around. One of them, the one that played the lead role, was actually more the character than the character itself. Like she took it she embodied this character in a more incredible way than I could ever write. It was so just a dream, an absolute dream. So that I've had that feeling before, and I also learned a lot from that process in having to let go of this is no longer just mine. It sounds like a Taylor Swift's manuscript. Like the story is now yours. It was like that, and you have to give it to the composer or the producers and the writers, and they're wanting to involve me in the process, but I'm not writing it myself, and I'm wanting to learn about screenwriting from them. So it's very exciting.
Oh my gosh.
You are so cool.
I know.
Your resume is like everywhere, and I love it.
Oh gosh, I don't know. 14-year-old me would never have expected anyone to ever say that, because I was the one doing homework in the school holidays.
Yeah. That's funny. Okay, and so for my last question, without spoilers if possible, do you have a favorite line, scene, moment from Pictures of You that makes you emotional, or just one that you kind of go back to and reread? Or
Yeah, it's definitely the scene where one of the characters loses their mum. And the reason why it matters so much to me is that when I wrote that, it was actually very much drawn from real life, but it was a combination of both of my losses. So it wasn't exactly what happened to mum or what happened to Jeff, but a very, very close combination of both, which for me, I cried my eyes out writing that scene. It's the most important scene I think I've ever written, and it will always mean the most to me, I think, out of everything I write in the future.
Amazing.
yeah.
I think I might permanently have goosebumps now for the rest
I
of
know.
the
Yeah.
Oh my
for
goodness.
sure.
Oh my goodness. We adore you.
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
This is
I could talk to you all day, all night in your case.
I know.
well, don't wait for your next book. Whenever you write another one,
Yeah.
you'll come back on.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, I'm editing it now, so hopefully it will be with you next year, early next year sometime.
Oh, don't tease us.
Can I pre-order yet? I don't even know the premise, nothing. I'll pre-order.
It doesn't matter. If it
Doesn't
doesn't have
matter.
a gray, then we're getting it.
Oh, thank you.
Okay, so we're gonna do what we call this segment is called lightning round with the Suriel. So it's like a this or that questions.
Okay.
Okay. So as quick as you can. Ready? Coffee or tea?
Coffee.
Okay. Paperback, hardback, or Kindle?
Audio.
Okay.
Extra one. Extra one.
We gotta
Yeah.
now.
I personally listen to your books on Audible. So
Yeah.
and can we just pause this really quick? I just looked up Nick English on Instagram. He's quite the looker.
He is absolutely what you imagine Drew to be.
Yeah.
And more.
Like
I had to attempt he may listen to this, so I don't want to sound like I've got a crush on him, but
I do.
Everyone who I've told has said, "Oh wow, yeah, I could see him as Drew on the screen."
Yeah, no.
If he's willing, tell him he'd be a great Drew.
Yeah.
He already knows the line, so
Yeah, right? He's handsome. Okay. Okay, so as I was just got caught up looking at his Instagram again. Okay. What do you prefer? First person POV or third person POV?
I don't know. I just write first person. I can't help it, so I'll have to say first person.
Okay. Are you an early morning reader or late night?
I'm an afternoon.
Oh, you don't often hear that one. I like that. Okay. Fall in love slowly or love at first sight?
Both, because I like it to have been a first sight thing that then didn't work out for a long time.
Well, like a second chance.
Oh, yeah.
yeah.
Like that, yeah.
Yeah, no, I'm a sucker for the second chance love.
And that's the second. And
Yeah.
that's the last question.
Yeah. So which we just kind of answered it. Second chance at love or brand new beginnings?
Yeah, I think it is second chance, and I don't know. I think it's just something that a lot of us share, where we have maybe a memory of our first crush or our first love, or the one that got away, or something like that. I think it's pretty powerful stuff.
Oh,
Yeah,
that is. I love that so much.
that's true. That is good.
Oh. Okay, Dina. Conclusion questions, even though I don't want this to ever end.
So projects, we know that you're working on the screen adaptation, right? Anything else? I mean, I heard another book possibly.
Yes, this other book that's I'm terrified that any second the editors will drop into my inbox here as the next round of revisions. So that's happening very soon, probably this week. But that's been so much fun to write, and I'm really looking forward to sharing that. It's called Start at the End, and it will be coming out next spring.
Your spring or our spring?
Your spring. Autumn. So yes, really looking forward to that, and then there'll be a book after that, which I'm just starting to think about now.
Ooh,
My
exciting.
goodness.
And these are all standalones, no like duologies.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, cool.
I like
Very cool.
a standalone.
Oh yeah.
I'm here for a standalone.
Mm-hmm.
It's nice. Everything's wrapped up in a beautiful.
Occasionally, I think about a series, and then I just become overwhelmed before I even get any further. I think authors that can pull that off are incredible.
If you can do it. I mean, there's a lot to say about being able to capture so much story, character development with still giving all the plot twists in just one novel. That I think that's an amazing feat as well.
Okay, good. I'll go with that then.
Awesome. So is there anything else that you want the listeners to know?
I just want to say what a delight it's been talking to the three of you, and just to every person that I interacted with on both the American book tours. I just feel so privileged to be published at all anywhere in the world, but particularly getting an Australian author, being able to meet so many American readers this way has just been a dream come true. And I feel like everyone I meet, I feel like I've known you for years. It's just been completely delightful from start to finish, and I'm so grateful to the readers in the Northern Hemisphere that have helped me along the way.
We're here for you.
I know.
Oh my goodness. Well, next time that you come to America, we are definitely going to.
We're East Coast. We'll be there.
Let's do it. Let's do something. Let's do an event.
Yes,
I love it.
Yes. Oh my god. Oh my goodness.
Right. So where can listeners connect with you online or learn more about your books?
They can go to emigre.com.au or Emigre Author on Instagram and Facebook. And I think I'm on TikTok, but I don't know how to use it. So
I don't like TikTok.
Took anything away.
Okay, we might be too old for TikTok, so it's fine.
Yeah.
Fine. Awesome.
It was such a pleasure.
I know. I love her so much, guys.
It's such like an easy interview too. It was cash but informative and crying and
you make it really easy. You ask great questions, and you can tell because you've got such a long-term vibe together as a group of friends. I think that makes it easy. You feel like you're just a group of friends,
We're just like humongous fans of you. You're as a writer, but also like your kids are so lucky to have you as a mom. What a great person you are.
Yeah. It's so nice. I will tell them that because I don't think they always think that.
You should tell them that.
Make them listen to this podcast.
Think I'm awesome.
Well, I've got a 14-year-old son now, so I'm lucky to get a couple of grunts out of him a day.
Oh boy.
No, they're pretty great kids.
They sound wonderful.
Yeah.
All right, everybody. So make sure you follow us everywhere you listen. Rate and review us, please. Follow us on Instagram at Sips with the Suriel, Suriel. Click our Linktree bio and follow us on Goodreads. We will also put our episodes each week on YouTube, so please subscribe and like. Same name, Sips with the Suriel. Okay, friends, keep reading to whatever end.
Thank you, Emma. Bye-bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.